Chapter 2075. If that was all, Chu Yang's impression of this person would probably be that he valued him very much. However, this person's aura, composure, and the special feeling that everything was under his control were actually similar to the feeling that Mo Tianji gave him. In fact, it was even better than that. This person was definitely not to be trifled with. At least, not in the short term. Chu Yang made this judgment in his heart, and secretly became somewhat vigilant. Opponent. Beside the white-robed man stood a black-robed young man. This young man in black was also not very old, looking about 27 or 28 years old. He was dressed in black as ink. His eyebrows were sharp and his eyes were bright. The contours of his face were as if they were carved by a knife. The lines were so rigid that it gave people a feeling of uncanny workmanship. This face seemed to be made with a mold. It did not look natural at all. But it was indeed natural. Although thin and weak, it gave people the feeling of a tough man. This person also had his hands behind his back. A pair of cold eyes looked at Chu Yang. Those two cold eyes fell on Chu Yang's face. It actually made Chu Yang feel as if there were actual needles pricking him. His face faintly hurt. This person gave him the feeling that he was a combination of Gu Duxing and Dong Wuxiang. Sharp and heavy. It was just that the feeling that Gu Duxing and Dong Wuxiang gave him was that of someone who could entrust their lives to each other. But the feeling that the person in front of him gave him was a kind of awkwardness and discomfort from the bottom of his heart. Although he was smiling at this moment, and it was the kind of smile that came from the bottom of his heart. But Chu Yang could still feel waves of coldness in his heart. And a kind of coldness that was like a kind of killing intent. This person, whether now or in the future, would not be on the same path as him. This person was quite scary. Chu Yang also came to a conclusion about the second person in his heart. Opponent. The last person was a young man dressed in purple. Purple had always been a color that symbolized natural nobility. But not everyone could wear purple clothes. However, when this person wore it, it complemented each other perfectly, as if it was a natural combination. This person's eyebrows were a little thick. His nose was not very straight either. Even his skin was a little dark. But he gave people the feeling that he was a rich and powerful man, who looked down on the world with a smile. Extremely carefree and at ease. It was as if there was nothing in the world that he couldn't do. There was nothing that he couldn't do. At this moment, there was a smile in his eyes as he looked at Chu Yang quietly. This person gave Chu Yang the feeling that he was the most dangerous of the three. He felt as if he was facing Meng Luo and Odu Xiao at the same time in the third heaven. From this third person, Chu Yang made a final conclusion. Opponent. He was an extremely threatening opponent. This kind of situation where he could determine whether he was an enemy or a friend was not rare in Chu Yang's life. Chu Yang wasn't a jealous person, but he had an incomprehensible intuition about the opponents he was about to face. He couldn't explain it in words. An opponent was an opponent. An enemy is an enemy. A friend is a friend. Brothers are brothers. There was nothing to explain. However, Chu Yang himself might not have realized it. In this world, there were not many people who were qualified to be recognized by him as his opponent. Diwu Qingru of the lower three heavens was one of them. Odu Xiao and the others of the third heaven could barely be regarded as his opponents. But their level was too low. The Dharma King of the upper three heavens was also the former think tank of the calamity, Diwu Chochang. And Chu Yang recognized him very much. Apart from him, Chu Yang didn't have any other opponents. Senior brother Shiqian Shan, and the extremely powerful extraterrestrial demon, might have the strength to threaten Chu Yang's life. But they weren't qualified to be Chu Yang's opponents. Being regarded as Chu Yang's opponent was a great honor for a person. That was because he wasn't inferior to anyone. Chu Yang was so outstanding that even he himself hadn't realized it. Unfortunately, Chu Yang himself hadn't realized this fact that was worthy of being proud of. So it was needless to say about these three people standing opposite him. But these three special people had appeared in front of him, and they had appeared here. The real opponents that Chu Yang had to face in the Heavenly Imperial Court had finally appeared. The first wave. These three people were standing on this street. They blended in perfectly with everything around them, but they were also out of place at the same time. It seemed as if they were lotus blooming in the mud without being stained. They also seemed as if the bright moon in the sky had arrived in the world, harmonious and detached. While Chu Yang was sizing up these three people were sizing him up as well. This young man in black walked over calmly from the other side. His movement speed wasn't very fast, but the distance between each step was perfectly balanced. In the eyes of these three people, Chu Yang seemed to leave a clear mark on the ground with each step he took. When he walked over step by step, although there weren't any marks left on the ground, in the eyes of these three people, there were two neat rows of footsteps. The direction and distance of the first step and the second step were exactly the same. There wasn't even a millimeter of difference. The direction and distance of the heels of this step and the second step were exactly the same. The direction of the toes of the feet were exactly the same. The distance covered by each step was exactly the same. There wasn't even a millimeter of difference. He walked over just like that. But he was like the most precise machine. There wasn't any deviation at all. Not even the slightest deviation would appear. The gazes of these three people gradually became cautious, serious, and solemn. From these neat footsteps, the three people felt a sense of pressure from their hearts at the same time. It was a kind of pressure that could suffocate the heart and make it stop beating. But none of the three people said it out loud. They continued to observe Chu Yang. The material of his black clothes was very unique. It didn't look like the traditional clothes of the Heaven Imperial Court. But it was very fitting. Yes, there seemed to be a slight protrusion at the hem of his black robe. It didn't look like there was a weapon hidden there. But there was definitely something else. This person's eyes were very clear and pure. But the divine light in his eyes was constant. The corners of his mouth curved slightly, as if he was smiling at any time. But only those who were completely clear about this face would know. A person with such a face, if they were to become enemies with him, how vicious would his attacks be? He would never give his enemy any chance. His eyes were very bright. The black and white of his eyes were very distinct. There wasn't even a trace of blood in them. This kind of person kept himself in the most complete state of consciousness at all times. His feet were moving. His arms were also moving. From every strand of his hair to the soles of his feet, his entire body was in a natural harmony. He didn't need to be on guard intentionally. But his most normal posture was already the most perfect defense. He could adjust all the functions of his body to the most suitable position at any time, any place, in any kind of unexpected situation. Whether it was attacking or defending, he could do it as he pleased. Although his every move seemed to be careless, in fact, it was a kind of strong confidence that only people with extreme confidence could have. It was the kind of strong confidence that everything is under my control. This kind of person had always been the most difficult to deal with. At the same time, the three people opposite him came to such a conclusion about Chu Yang. These observations and discoveries about each other sounded very long. But in fact this process was very short. Almost at the moment when the two sides met, everyone had an evaluation of each other. As highly intelligent people, and also the top experts in each other's fields, everyone clearly believed in one thing. The accuracy of determining friend or foe at first sight was absolutely as high as 10%. Everyone was a confident person. They firmly believed that they wouldn't make a mistake. If their first impression was wrong, it would be tantamount to a disaster for such people. Because they were very stubborn. They stubbornly believed in their first impression. Chu Yang stopped at a distance of 20 feet away from the three people. This distance was very subtle. If he were to ask a question from 30 feet away, there would be a sense of distance. But at this distance, there was no distinction between friend and foe. It was enough to go up and be intimate. But it seemed that it was also enough to go up and kill. It was enough for ordinary people. The three people revealed an inexplicable smile in their eyes. They were very clear that the person in front of them had given the choice to the three of them, whether they were friend or foe. But such a choice was somewhat uncomfortable for the three of them. They usually gave this choice to others. Since when was it someone else's turn to make a choice? Let you make a choice, or let me make a choice. These were two completely different things. One was active, and the other was passive. Obviously, these people weren't used to being passive. But now, they were in front of Chu Yang's house. Chu Yang was acting as the master. The three of them had no choice but to accept it. Otherwise, the following topic wouldn't be able to be discussed. Just as the three of them were unwilling, but they had no choice but to open their mouths first. A warm and genial smile suddenly appeared on Chu Yang's face. At this moment, under the influence of his smile, the gate of the Chu clan seemed to have suddenly turned into spring. It was intoxicating. May I ask who the three of you are? Haha. Chu Yang's eyes seemed to be smiling. The three of you have brought light to my humble home. Could it be that you've been waiting for me? I'm flattered. I'm really flattered. The unbelievably handsome young man smiled, revealing a row of snow-white teeth. It actually made people's eyes light up. Well, if your name is Chu Yang, then the three of us brothers are here to look for you. Chu Yang laughed and said cordially, "It's an honor to have the three of you come in person. It's really an honor." As he said, he winked ambiguously and mischievously and said, "But I think that it's better for us to talk inside." As he said, he winked again and said, "Look, with three handsome men like you standing in front of my house, many young ladies and young wives can't walk. I'm afraid that there will be many more bachelors in our purple cloud city. It's really a sin." Chapter 2076. He gently hugged Wu Qianqian's naked body in his arms. He thought for a while, and didn't want to put her down. Instead, he quickly took off his clothes as well. At this moment, the two of them were completely naked. Chu Yang held Wu Qianqian in his arms, and slowly activated the power of his life dantian. A surging life force slowly appeared and lingered around the two of them. Then, Chu Yang put the super heavy pill in his mouth, and placed it against Wu Qianqian's small mouth. He gently used the tip of his tongue to pry open Wu Qianqian's unconscious teeth, and sent the super heavy pill into her mouth. The super heavy pill melted in Wu Qianqian's mouth, after it was no longer wrapped by Chu Yang's heaven-splitting divine technique. It turned into a warm current, and flowed into Wu Qianqian's body. The super heavy pill melted in her mouth, and saved her a lot of trouble. At the same time, Chu Yang didn't move his lips away, because the majestic vitality was flowing into Wu Qianqian's mouth from his mouth. Their bodies were in close contact. Chu Yang's vitality and spiritual power were madly pouring into Wu Qianqian's body. With a slight sound, Wu Qianqian's and Chu Yang's hair flew up due to the surging power of vitality. They floated in the air. A faint layer of redness gradually appeared on Wu Qianqian's snow-white body. The enormous medicinal efficacies rapidly passed through her body in an unstoppable manner. They broke open the stagnant meridians in her body, and almost solidified them. This process would undoubtedly be extremely painful if Wu Qianqian was awake. However, she wasn't awake at the moment. She didn't even have the slightest consciousness. In a sense, this could be considered a blessing in disguise. Now, she could only passively let the meridians in her body continuously receive the impact. With the powerful impact of the enormous medicinal power, her meridians were constantly broken, but were constantly being reformed by the medicinal power. This cycle repeated. This violent process didn't stop because of the serious blockage of her meridians. Although the process was slow, it progressed layer by layer. There was no sign of slowing down. Chu Yang's divine sense followed the continuous progressive and reforming process in Wu Qianqian's body. He saw cold sweat all over his body. If a person was conscious, or even in a deep coma, such pain would be unbearable. However, as long as the person was conscious, they would definitely not be able to endure it. The unconscious Wu Qianqian was lying quietly in Chu Yang's arms. Her face still had that kind of contented and melancholy smile on it. It was a peaceful and concerned smile. Finally, this long and painful process came to an end. All the meridians in Wu Qianqian's body had been completely connected. Or it should be said that her meridians had been completely reorganized. Wu Qianqian's meridians were now like an incomparably smooth road with the help of the enormous medicinal efficacy and the nourishment of Chu Yang's vitality energy. It could be said that since the beginning of human history, there was absolutely no one whose meridians were smoother than Wu Qianqian's. Even Mo Qinggu and Chu Yang, who had cultivated the heaven-overlapping divine technique and had many fortuitous encounters, could not compare in this aspect. However, Wu Qianqian's body was still deathly still. There was no sign of life. It could be faintly felt that the vitality energy and the medicinal efficacy were surging in her meridians. And there was also a thick black death energy entwined with them. The death energy was still struggling unceasingly. It was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws to counterattack. It was doing everything it could to resist. At this moment, the life energy and the medicinal efficacy met in the dantian. Chu Yang's enormous spiritual power fiercely poured in. Wu Qianqian's originally expressionless face suddenly flushed. Then, she opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood that should have been bright red was now reddish-black. It was mixed with blackish-purple blood clots. Chu Yang sensitively felt that Wu Qianqian was close to his chest. He could hear a soft heartbeat. This was the moment. Chu Yang waved his hand and put the jade-like half of the resurrection grass that he had prepared earlier into Wu Qianqian's mouth. Then, Chu Yang used his own mouth to tightly press against Wu Qianqian's sandalwood mouth. A pure spiritual power completely blocked the path of the medicinal efficacy of the resurrection grass. Then it rushed down along her meridians. At the same time, the other half of the grass turned into the purest spiritual power in Chu Yang's palm. Then, Chu Yang patted Wu Qianqian's dantian and locked it there. Not a single drop of it leaked out. Wu Qianqian's snow-white and tender body suddenly showed a strange situation. Starting from her neck, the original snow-white color turned into a sad pink color. Moreover, the area was rapidly expanding. A bright pink color quickly occupied the original snow-white territory and kept spreading downwards. Starting from Wu Qianqian's dantian, her entire lower body and her 2 legs also turned pink the moment the other half of the spiritual power entered her body. Then it spread upwards in the opposite direction. One on the top and one on the bottom. They moved side by side and gradually converged. Looking at the speed of the 2 sides, it was completely foreseeable that these 2 forces of pink would converge at Wu Qianqian's heart. As long as they successfully converged, it would be the time of great success. Chu Yang was completely focused. He did not dare to slack off in the slightest. The spiritual power in his life force dantian poured out in torrents, as if it did not care about its own life. Inside the death energy dantian, other than absorbing the death energy from Wu Qianqian's body bit by bit, it continued to transform. It transformed the death energy in its body into life force energy, and injected it back into the life force dantian. It tried its best to prolong the duration of the output from the life force dantian. The 2 patches of pink were slowly and methodically advancing, and the heartbeat in Wu Qianqian's chest gradually changed from 1 beat, after a long time, to a slow and continuous beat. Although the number of beats was still much less than that of a normal person, the characteristics of life had already begun to recover in her body. Now, it was the most crucial moment. Success or failure depended on this one move. The death energy in Wu Qianqian's meridians, under the effect of the strong medicinal power and the life spiritual power, had quickly condensed to one place. It was on the verge of being expelled. As long as this death energy was expelled, Wu Qianqian's resurrection would not be hindered. However, at this moment, Chu Yang's mind suddenly recalled a few sentences. Mo Qing Wu of the clouds. The path of 3 lives can mend the sky. Yin and Yang need to cherish the beauty. Chu Yang, who was completely focused and did not dare to be careless, could not help but be in a trance at this moment. Chu Yang had already considered and analyzed these few sentences for a long time. In fact, this was also one of the reasons why he had to bring Tai Butian up regardless of the consequences. Mo Qing Wu of the clouds. This sentence had already confirmed one meaning. Mo Qing Wu had already come to the clouds. But what was the other meaning? Mo Qing Wu? Mo Qing Wu? Was this advising him to be cautious? Did it mean not to be young and frivolous? Or was it warning Mo Qing Wu not to do anything rashly? Yin and Yang need to cherish the beauty. This sentence had already confirmed that Wu Qianqian had almost been separated by Yin and Yang because of Chu Yang. Yes, it was not just a little, it was already separated by Yin and Yang. Yin and Yang need to cherish the beauty. This prophecy or disaster could be said to have already passed. But what did the sentence "the path of 3 lives can mend the sky" mean? The reason why Chu Yang brought Tai Butian with him was to avoid this prophecy. If one of them was in the heavenly imperial court, and the other was in the heavenly realm, it would be too late for Chu Yang to do anything about it. At least for now, Chu Yang had no way of dealing with it. If I want to mend the sky, why should I go to the path of 3 lives? Chu Yang definitely did not want to go through the pain of the path of 3 lives. He would definitely not let Tai Butian go through it. That was really too painful. With Mo Qingwu's past and present life, and Wu Qianqian's separation of yin and yang, this was already enough. I really don't need any reincarnation of the path of 3 lives. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. Could it be that something is going to happen to Tai Butian after all? Some kind of unforeseen event? Chu Yang frowned. If that's the case, I still have to be more vigilant during this period of time. My current strength is still not enough. If we reach the heavenly realm, maybe we won't have to worry about anything anymore. But now, Chu Yang was thinking in his heart. Coincidentally, at this moment Wu Qianqian, who was hugging her chest, suddenly shook violently. Then, an unusually strong aura of death suddenly emanated from her body. At the same time, some greenish-purple fog slowly seeped out from her skin. Chu Yang concentrated, not daring to be careless, and used all his strength to expel this aura of death. In order to avoid any possibility of the aura of death flowing back, he simply used the multiplication heaven's divine technique to absorb all the aura of death into his dantian. After circulating the technique, he converted all the aura of death into vitality and re-injected it into Wu Qianqian's body. This originally came from Wu Qianqian's body, and could be said to be the elements of Wu Qianqian's body. Although the aura of death formed by these elements would only bring about negative effects, it still came from Wu Qianqian. At this moment, after being converted by Chu Yang's multiplication heaven's divine technique, although the elements were different, the essence was not changed. Therefore, it was easy for it to merge with Wu Qianqian's body without any obstruction. Wu Qianqian's motionless body slowly trembled. The long eyelashes of her tightly closed eyes suddenly trembled, as if she was trying to open them with all her might. But she had some misgivings, or maybe it was because she didn't have the strength. Suddenly, Wu Qianqian let out a moan. Although this moan was weak, it was like the sound of nature to Chu Yang. The sword spirit, who had been standing outside worriedly, also heard this little movement. He finally let out a long sigh. My mother, it's finally done. Since this matter is over, I have to go back quickly. There's still a lot of aura of death waiting there. The sword spirit transmitted a thought to Chu Yang. Then, he immediately calculated and said anxiously, oh no, a whole day has passed. I don't know what's going on in the infinite boundless mountain now. Not good. Chapter 2077. Chu Yang didn't answer the sword spirit's question. That's because there was a huge surprise waiting for him. Everything else wasn't important. Wu Qianqian finally opened her eyes. She opened her eyes and saw Chu Yang's eyes. They were filled with an anxious expression. Her eyes were like those of a newborn. Chu Yang was instantly immersed in this pair of eyes in pleasant surprise. Wu Qianqian's eyes were wide open. It was as if she was in a dream. She looked at Chu Yang in disbelief. Her eyes were filled with love and disbelief. Her long eyelashes fluttered wildly. I am not dreaming, Wu Qianqian said in a heavy voice. Chu Yang finally felt relieved. Wu Qianqian's voice was full of energy. She wasn't weaker than an ordinary person. She hadn't fully recovered, but she was much better. Of course, how can this be a dream? Chu Yang gazed at her. Their eyes were almost stuck together. They could clearly feel the heat of each other's breath as they spoke. Wu Qianqian looked at Chu Yang in a daze. Suddenly, the corners of her mouth curled up. It seemed as if she wanted to laugh. But she didn't succeed in the end. Instead, she opened her small mouth to cry. Then tears silently filled her eyes, and trickled down like broken pearls. Then she started to sob silently. She was crying, but she still couldn't bear to close her eyes. She stubbornly stared at Chu Yang. She was afraid that the face she loved would disappear if she closed her eyes and opened them again. Chu Yang knew her feelings. So he hugged her tightly. He also didn't want to let go. He was so moved. His heart was full of warmth and gratitude. Wu Qianqian had just woken up. She didn't notice that she wasn't wearing any clothes. She knew that Chu Yang had also completely ignored it. The two were facing each other in the most private way. Moreover, Chu Yang remembered the sword spirit's instructions. Wu Qianqian's body was suspended in the air. Her feet were off the ground. Her entire weight was hanging on Chu Yang's body. The two looked at each other. They were extremely happy. After a long while, Wu Qianqian's emotions calmed down a little. She looked at Chu Yang affectionately and asked, "Is this really true?" Her voice was still full of uncertainty. Being with her beloved in her long slumber was already the greatest consolation. However, she had lost too much. So Wu Qianqian did not dare to believe that everything in front of her was real. "Really? It's true." Chu Yang looked at her and nodded with certainty. Wu Qianqian suddenly covered her mouth with her hand and started crying. That pair of beautiful eyes was finally willing to close. However, due to the bitterness of the pleasant surprise, as well as the sourness of her eyes from not daring to close them for too long, more and more tears gushed out. In an instant, tears gushed out like a spring. "Thank God. Thank the earth." Wu Qianqian murmured and hugged Chu Yang tightly. She leaned her head against Chu Yang's chest and said softly, "Chu Yang, I once made up my mind." "What is it?" "When I was unconscious, I thought that if I could wake up one day, I would say something to you. Something that I wanted to say to you for a long time, but did not have the courage to say." Wu Qianqian raised her head and looked at Chu Yang. She didn't even blink. She said seriously, "Chu Yang, Qianqian likes you." Chu Yang suddenly closed his eyes. He only felt that the softest part of his heart had been ruthlessly hit. It was full of sour and tender feelings. Scenes of the past quickly flashed through his mind. They were right in front of his eyes. It turned out that his beloved had already left an indelible mark in his heart. It was just that he had completely ignored it in the past. Heavenly Armament Pavilion, that black robe, that ferocious mask, and that black hair behind the mask, that unparalleled beauty. When she left, she gave him a big package. Inside it were black robes that Wu Qianqian had sewn together. He did not know how many there were. At the bottom of each black robe, there was a slight protrusion that did not attract attention. That was the heart of a young girl. There, on each black robe, there were a few words embroidered with hair. "Chu Yang, Qianqian likes you." The devastating beauty of the ninja sect turned into a black robe, and a black robe. A cold heart and jade bones made a mask for the monarch. The long hair behind the gold mask fluttered in the wind, and the eyes full of tenderness. Chu Yang seemed to see that day again. He slapped open the bottom of the black robe. There, the words made of hair quietly appeared on the stone floor. "Chu Yang, Qianqian likes you." Scenes of the past flashed through his eyes. In an instant, Chu Yang really seemed to have gone through 3 lifetimes. Chu Yang suddenly opened his eyes. What he saw was Wu Qianqian's fervent eyes, with some uneasiness, fear, shyness, and a trace of sadness in the depths of her eyes. As if she had foreseen Chu Yang's rejection, Wu Qianqian's fervent eyes slowly dimmed. The light in her eyes slowly retracted. That kind of inferiority and self-pity. "Senior Wu, I also like you." Chu Yang couldn't help but hug her tightly. "I also like you, Senior Wu Qianqian." Wu Qianqian's eyes widened in surprise. The sadness in the depths of her eyes suddenly turned into a completely overwhelmed surprise. She originally didn't have any hope. It was just that the great joy and sorrow after life and death made her state of mind a little unbalanced. She was afraid that she would lose him forever. But when she heard Chu Yang's reply, it was as if a bolt of lightning suddenly lit up her cloudy sky. It completely lit up her hazy sky. "It turns out that it's not that I don't want it. It's not that I don't care." She trembled as she looked at Chu Yang. Suddenly, tears streamed down her face. She cried tears of joy and hugged him tightly. "Chu Yang, thank you for liking me. Thank you for liking me. I'm so happy. I want to cry." Chu Yang's heart ached. He was agitated. This poor girl. Her life's wish was actually so humble. Her love was so real, so pure, so deep, but she was still so nervous. She had already given up all her love, and she had no regrets. She actually had to wholeheartedly thank her lover for saying that she liked him. Why did she have to do this? What kind of deep love was this? How can I, Chu Yang, be able to make her fall in love with me so wholeheartedly? Immediately he was overjoyed. Just now when she hugged him, Her strength was surprisingly great. Could it be that her body had already completely recovered? Even his cultivation had been restored? Actually, Chu Yang had overlooked a very important point. When Wu Qianqian was in a life-or-death situation, her cultivation was not considered too high, not to mention the current Chu Yang. Even the Chu Yang who had not ascended the heavenly imperial palace. The difference between the two was extremely huge. Even with Chu Yang's current cultivation, he was still shocked by Wu Qianqian's strength. One could imagine how great Wu Qianqian's strength was now. Chu Yang gently patted Wu Qianqian's smooth back and comforted her in a soft voice. Well, it's all over now. We're all fine now. Yes, yes. Wu Qianqian hid her beautiful face in his arms and nodded vigorously. Suddenly she cried out in surprise, "Why is my body so?" Then she screamed again. I'm not wearing any clothes." Suddenly, she could not restrain her shyness. "Why aren't you this, Yumi?" Chu Yang also woke up at this time. He was somewhat embarrassed, and even had a strange feeling in his heart. In an instant he actually had a reaction. A certain part of him was at daggers drawn, and was firmly pressed against Wu Qianqian's flat lower abdomen. It was as if he was about to attack a city, and fight bravely. This is actually what happened. Chu Yang's mouth and tongue were dry as he explained the whole process. "You'd better put me down first. How would this look?" Wu Qianqian was so embarrassed that her whole body was burning. It turned out that someone was still hugging her tightly. The two naked bodies were still tightly pressed against each other as before. "It's all right. Well, you've just been treated. How would you have the strength to walk?" "Oh right, you haven't taken a bath yet." Chu Yang said shamelessly. "Let's go, I'll carry you to take a bath." "Don't. I can walk by myself. Really, I can take a bath by myself. I have the strength." Wu Qianqian shyly struggled with all her strength. If it was someone else, she would have been broken free. How would this look like someone who did not have the strength to walk? "Don't move. I'm telling you, even if you have the strength, it's not enough. You can't move rashly now. What if your injuries relapse? I have the final say in this matter." Chu Yang's face was stern. He said in a very domineering manner, "Don't move. I'll take a bath for you. I've already bathed you 800 times before. What's wrong with that?" The righteousness did not last for a moment. His heart was dirty and vulgar. Wu Qianqian struggled, but could not break free. She did not know why, but her whole body was burning. She felt the strong body of the man in front of her tightly pressed against her. His muscles moved rhythmically. She could not help but feel weak all over. Chu Yang carried Wu Qianqian and walked to the large jade vat that had been prepared earlier. Inside the vat there was already warm spring water. You put me down. I'll take a bath by myself." Wu Qianqian's voice was like a mosquito. She was so shy that she closed her eyes and did not look again. "It's all right. I'm already used to it. Did you think I was joking? I've already bathed you 800 times." Chu Yang laughed mischievously. "Used to it? 800 times?" Wu Qianqian did not understand. "Well, during this period of time you can't move. I'll come every 2 days to take a bath for you. Then I'll give you a massage. Then I'll change your clothes." Chu Yang said softly. "I've already bathed your body many times. Even if it's not 800 times, it's at least 800 times." "You've bathed many times? 800 times? 800 times?" Wu Qianqian was so shy that she almost fainted. According to what he said, he had seen everything, and even touched it. Chapter 2078. The warm spring water wrapped around their bodies. Wu Qianqian closed her eyes tightly, not daring to look at the person in front of her. "Since it's already, then let's sigh." The next moment, she felt Chu Yang's warm hands roaming around her body, gently scrubbing her from head to toe, her neck, her shoulders, her soft breasts, her lower abdomen, her perky buttocks, her thighs. There was nothing that he did not touch. Chu Yang did not miss a single spot. His movements were gentle and skillful. Wu Qianqian only felt her heart beating wildly. For a moment, she felt a little dizzy. After a long while, she suddenly felt a surge of tenderness. Looking at Chu Yang's skillful movements, it was obvious that he had done it more than once, or even more than a dozen times. Could it be that he had done it more than 100 times? She thought about how she had been unconscious like a corpse. and how Chu Yang had taken care of her for 2 whole years. Chu Yang had been so meticulous and considerate. In this world, who else could be like Chu Yang, who had taken care of a living corpse for 2 whole years without the slightest bit of disdain? Wu Qianqian's heart was filled with an indescribable tenderness. She was also touched. Although she was still embarrassed, her heart had calmed down a lot. At this moment, she felt Chu Yang's hands suddenly stop. He had finished washing. Then his hands slid to her chest, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally. Then, he gently held her breasts. This action was very different from the previous bathing. The feeling was completely different. Chu Yang's hands were not only holding her breasts, but they were also moving gently. Although Wu Qianqian closed her eyes, she could imagine that Chu Yang had played with her breasts until they were out of shape. A pair of warm lips pressed against her ear. Wu Qianqian's body suddenly trembled. She only felt her earlobe being held by those warm lips. In an instant, her whole body convulsed and trembled. She only heard Chu Yang softly say, "Senior sister Wu, be my woman, okay?" Wu Qianqian suddenly hid her head in Chu Yang's bosom. She was trembling like a frightened quail. She could feel a strange feeling rising in her body. It was strange, but there was also a faint expectation. With a splash, Chu Yang stepped out of the bathtub with Wu Qianqian in his arms. His hands held senior martial sister Wu's soft and supple buttocks. His chin gently lifted Wu Qianqian's small head and sucked on Wu Qianqian's red lips. Although Wu Qianqian loved a certain someone very much, she had never experienced such a fiery scene. She was just about to scream when she felt a soft tongue entering her mouth. In that instant, my soul flew out of my body, and I no longer knew what day it was. When she woke up again, she didn't know when Chu Yang had placed her on the bed. Then, she felt Chu Yang leaning on her body and whispering in her ear, "Qianqian." Wu Qianqian closed her eyes and blushed. Then she nodded her head imperceptibly. At this moment, Tai Butian was calculating the strength of the Chu clan in her room, so that she could make further plans. Since the 3 Saber Saints joined the Chu clan, the strength of the Chu clan had increased significantly. In addition, there was Duan Songkong, who was about to recover his strength. Something was fishy. Chu Yang. If such strength was placed in Purple Cloud City 2 months ago, it would have been enough to dominate. But now it was far from enough to protect itself. The Miao clan can be a potential ally, but a single Miao clan is still not enough. Chu Yang is trying his best to find a way out for these children. Pushing out a sect is equivalent to gaining the friendship of this sect. This is also a potential network. It can't be underestimated. It needs to be managed carefully. But what's going on with this young leader? This time, I can clearly feel the undercurrent surging. It's very dangerous. Tai Butian frowned. Although this situation was almost unsolvable, Tai Butian and Chu Yang were the same. They had walked out from unsolvable situations, so they didn't care much. At least, compared to the time when they fought against Diwu Qingru in the lower 3 heavens, the current situation was much more confident. Well, now the dreamlike secular pavilion and the Lingxiao faction can be said to have no life and death threats. If we can push out another sect, preferably from another world, we can form a mutual restraint. Then it will be more foolproof. It's just that this matter still needs to wait for the right time. Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard a knock on the door. Without raising her head, she said, "Come in." The door opened and Chu Yang walked in with a smile on his face. He looked very relaxed. "What's wrong? What are you so happy about?" Tai Butian frowned. "Well, I finally did something big today. Your Majesty, you should thank me. I let you and your husband reunite today." Chu Yang winked. "Husband and wife reunite? What do you mean?" Even though Tai Butian was very intelligent, she was still confused by Chu Yang's sudden words. "Well, you still don't understand. Husband and wife reunite means that I have brought you your empress. And she's still alive." Chu Yang laughed. "Qianqian." "She." Tai Butian stood up abruptly. "Where is she? Quickly take me to see her." Wu Qianqian blushed. She lowered her head and walked in slowly. "Qianqian." Tai Butian cheered. She went around Chu Yang and pounced over at lightning speed. She hugged Wu Qianqian. "The heavens have taken pity on you. You've finally woken up, my poor sister." Wu Qianqian was also very excited. Good friends, comrades in arms, and roommates from back then were finally reunited again. She also felt a little embarrassed. It seemed that they would have to serve the same husband from now on, and be different roommates. The two women held hands and talked excitedly. The feelings of reunion, after a long separation, were overflowing in their words. Chu Yang quietly pushed the door open and walked out. He would leave this space and time completely to these two women. Chu Yang was not very suitable to listen to women's topics. Walking out of the door and into the courtyard, he saw Duan Songkong instructing people to do work. There was also a team of martial artists practicing at the side. These are the people brought over by the giant spirit saber. They've all been assigned to our Chu clan's courtyard. Duan Songkong smiled and explained, Thunder Wild Saber's people are still on the way. They're relatively far away, and will only arrive in about 2 days. Yes. Chu Yang nodded and suddenly smiled mysteriously. Elder Duan, let me tell you something good. Tonight, let's try to circulate our martial arts. Except for the resurrection grass, all the materials are ready, right? One could understand the meaning of the song. Duan Songkong's eyes suddenly widened. He was so excited that he almost could not speak. Lord, could it be that the resurrection grass? Chu Yang smiled and nodded. I told you it's something good. Of course it's in my hands. Duan Songkong's body trembled violently. He was actually stunned. The greatest wish of his life was about to be fulfilled. From now on, he could completely get rid of the shackles of his old injuries and laugh proudly in the world again. Chu Yang quietly left. Duan Songkong needed to adjust his state of mind. Otherwise, if he were to draw out the saber energy of the infinite invincible saber in such an agitated state, there was a great chance that Duan Songkong's body would collapse and be completely destroyed. Brother Hu? Chu Yang thought for a while and decided to take precautions to eliminate all the hidden dangers at the moment. In the past few days, there had been a faint shadow shrouding his heart. This was an ominous sign. Chu Yang had never doubted this feeling of his. In fact, it was this vigilance that allowed him to avoid many potential dangers. Since he had such a premonition, something was definitely going to happen. And this thing was bound to be very unfavorable to him. What's the matter? Brother Hu stroked his beard. I have something to ask of you. Chu Yang said cautiously. What's the matter? Just say it. With Brother Hu around, it won't be difficult. Brother Hu took on everything. It's like this. Chu Yang gestured as he spoke. No problem. But I have a condition. Brother Hu raised his head and said proudly. What condition? Say it. Chu Yang said. He had long been prepared for Brother Hu to take advantage of the situation. I want 2 pieces of souls of the purple crystal. This isn't a lot. In exchange for my full help, it's worth it. Brother Hu was clearly lacking in confidence. Souls of the purple crystal. Chu Yang frowned, looking very hesitant. Just as Brother Hu's mood had hit rock bottom, and he was about to lower the price automatically, Chu Yang suddenly asked, how many more souls of the purple crystal do you need now to recover your injuries to the maximum limit that the purple crystal's energy can recover? Brother Hu was stunned. Then he said, how many pieces? Why do I still need 15 pieces? This is the minimum amount. 15 pieces? I'll give you 20 pieces. Use as much as you want. Chu Yang's words caused Brother Hu to pass out completely. Recover your strength to the limit that you can recover as soon as possible. Something big is likely to happen in the next few days. Chu Yang's expression was very grave. His voice was also very grave. He already had a premonition that a huge storm could come at any time. Although he didn't know what it was exactly, Chu Yang believed that it was definitely not a small matter. In order to get through this inexplicable crisis, Chu Yang was already sparing no expense. This premonition of crisis gave him too much pressure and too strong. Chu Yang didn't even have any confidence that he could guarantee that nothing would go wrong. No problem. Brother Hu cheered and jumped up, his tail wagging wildly. What level can you reach after swallowing 20 pieces of souls of the purple crystal? Chu Yang asked cautiously. At least heavenly man level. This level shouldn't be a problem. Brother Hu was full of confidence. Heavenly man level. If it's enough, it's barely enough. But if the old monsters on the other side attack, Then it's still not enough. Chu Yang pondered. Forget it. You'd better swallow these souls of the purple crystal first before talking about anything else. Chu Yang made up his mind fiercely. If it really didn't work, then he would just smash it with heavy pills. Smash it until you recovered even one more point. I'm going all out. It was clear that the demon army from the Heaven Imperial Court had finally arrived. The allure of the ruins was indeed shocking. Even the demon race couldn't resist it. They had crossed several planes to rush over. The members of the demon race were all grotesquely shaped. Some were handsome, some were perfect, and some were extremely ugly. They all went to extremes, with donkeys' lips and horses' mouths, bulls' heads and dogs' faces. As expected, it's a group of demons dancing wildly and bewitching all living beings. The sword spirit shook his head and entered the longsword formed by the sword intent again. In the blink of an eye, the black chi that was gushing out suddenly retracted and returned to its original state of trickling out. Suddenly, a strong wind blew across the sky, blowing away all the chilly aura of death lingering on the mountaintop in just a short while. This sudden change instantly attracted everyone's attention. The chilly aura returned to its original state a few days ago. Such a huge change naturally shocked everyone. They couldn't help but make guesses. Why did it suddenly return to normal? What's going on? Facing this strange change, all the major sects finally reacted. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A few figures came to the mountaintop like shooting stars. Shuexian, Haibo, and all the other senior experts of the same level landed on the mountaintop at the same time. They were afraid that they would miss out if they were late. Their expressions were solemn. They didn't go near the longsword that was flickering with cold light. They only observed the surroundings, paying attention to any clues. Strange. Since it can suppress it to this extent, why didn't it suppress the aura of death for an entire day? Why did it let the aura of death spread? Could it be that there's a limit to this sword's power, and after suppressing it to a certain extent, it has to be suspended for a certain period of time? There was a similar suspension in the past, just that it didn't last this long. Why do I always feel like I'm being spied on every time I come here? There's obviously no one around, but this feeling is abnormally strong. One of them frowned. The sword spirit followed his advice and immediately stopped looking around. His body completely merged with the longsword. I also have the same feeling. I thought I was too sensitive, but it turns out that everyone has the same feeling. Shuexian frowned and looked around. Suddenly she saw Wu Zhangxiu. He was staring at her without any concealment. His eyes were full of love. She couldn't help but sigh heavily. This guy is really annoying. I can't really kill him. It's killing me. Elder Mu of the Heavenly Sword Alliance frowned and muttered. Could this situation be a sign that the divine soul of the calamity below has awakened? It's fighting against the sword? And today, the aura of death has surged violently. Perhaps it was this sword that was at a disadvantage. Or maybe the two are equal. That's why the chilly aura of death has surged? The divine soul of the calamity had a similar movement before, but it was completely suppressed. At most, it only surged violently for a moment. Another person came to a realization. Now that everything is calm, it should be that the divine soul of the calamity has been suppressed again. That should be the case. In that case, this sword can actually suppress a mature and awakened divine soul of the calamity? The power of this sword is really shocking. The moment this sentence was said, the eyes of the 30-over-old guys lit up. They stared at the sword like searchlights. The sword spirit felt uncomfortable being stared at by so many eyes. Not only the sword spirit, anyone would feel uncomfortable being surrounded by so many expectant, longing, and covetous eyes. Shuexian snorted and said in a strange tone. What? Do you all want this sword? Sure. But I don't know if you have the ability to pick it up. The moment this question was asked, all of them became discouraged. Pick it up. How? How many people have died because of getting close to this sword? There's no lack of experts. We've all seen it with our own eyes. Why would we take the risk? Shuexian snorted and said, all of you can't even pick it up, and you're still dreaming? Even if you can pick up that sword, can you afford to offend the owner of this sword? Of course. If any of you have the ability to pick up that sword, you should be able to deal with the owner of the sword. The problem is which one of you can. All of the old men's faces turned red. All of you are idiots who don't know your own limits. Shuexian didn't let them off, and mocked them to her heart's content. Speaking of which, Shuexian was a very gentle woman. However, the fact that the various realms concealed the news of the battle in advance caused the Eastern Royal Heavens to suffer a huge loss. Even though Shuexian was a clay figurine, she still had some temper. Thus, every word she said was filled with sarcasm. Shuexian's words were undoubtedly sharp and unkind, but they exposed the truth. An old man said angrily, Shuexian, what do you mean by that? It's fine if everyone knows about some things. Even if you say it out loud, we won't bicker with you on account that you're a woman. But it's fine if you say it out loud but you're still not done? Do you really think that we're afraid of you? Shuexian was worried that she didn't have an excuse to flare up. When she heard that, she instantly flew into a rage. What? So what if I'm a woman? Women still know how to take responsibility for their actions. They don't hide and play dirty tricks. So what if I say a few more words? What I said wasn't true, so I'm not done. What can you do about it? I can see that you're afraid of me. If you're not convinced, come and spar with me. Do you dare? Shuexian wanted to cause trouble to vent her anger, so her words were naturally as unpleasant as they could be. That old man was so angry that his face turned red. Look, what is this? Are you scolding me like a shrew? Although he said that, this old man really didn't dare to go against Shuexian. His strength was slightly inferior to Wu Zhangxiu's, so how could he dare to spar with Shuexian? That wasn't a spar, it was simply asking for a beating. After all, not everyone was like Wu Zhangxiu, who enjoyed being beaten up. Shuexian stepped forward. So what if I say that you're greedy? So what if I say that you're delusional? So what if I say that you're not capable? So what if I say that you can't afford to offend others? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? That old man was forced to step back. Suddenly he was furious. Shuexian, do you really think that you've got me? I really don't care about you. Shuexian raised her eyebrows and pulled out her long sword. She looked angry. A bunch of people who only know how to play tricks. Why are you pulling out your sword? Let me teach you how to be a person. At least, I'll let you be more humane. Clang! That old man couldn't take it anymore. He shook his wrist and pulled out his long sword. The old man was also a high-ranking person of a sect. He couldn't afford to lose face like this. He would rather be beaten to death than be bullied to death. Both sides were in a heated atmosphere. They were on the verge of a fight. Or it should be said that the arrow was on the bow and had to be released. At this moment, Wu Zhangxiu rushed out and inserted himself between the two. He waved his hand and said, Everyone calm down. Calm down. Give me some face. That old man said angrily. Wu Zhangxiu, this has nothing to do with you. What are you doing? Wu Zhangxiu's face was full of smiles. He said, I shouldn't interfere in the matter between Shuexian and you. Besides, I'm shy and don't know how to talk. That old man's face relaxed a little. It was pure nonsense to say that Wu Zhangxiu was shy. However, he came out to mediate at this moment, which was what the old man wanted. As long as he could avoid a direct PK with Shuexian, it was fine to let Wu Zhangxiu talk. Wu Qianqian steeled her heart and decided to turn the tables. What else could I have done? I did those things that he did to you. This time, Tai Butian's face also turned red. She said angrily, You little hussy, what do you know? Don't spout nonsense. You're slandering me. Wu Qianqian snorted. She leaned close to her ear and whispered, Your Majesty, is my junior brother serving you well? Tai Butian's face instantly turned red. In her embarrassment, she pounced on Wu Qianqian and tickled her. Wu Qianqian turned her body to avoid him, but she was still scratched. So she repeatedly begged for mercy. Your Majesty, please spare my life. I won't dare to do it again. I won't dare to do it again. I won't say it again. By the way, what do you do when you're together? Another round of playful noises. Then, the two women leaned their heads together and whispered. Their faces were red, and their eyes were watery. They were so embarrassed that they could not restrain themselves. Xu Yang stood outside the door. His heart was burning as he listened. Somewhere, he was ready for battle and ready for a showdown. Then he could not hold it in anymore. He pushed the door open and barged in. Ah! The two women screamed in fear and turned their heads in a panic. When they saw Chu Yang, they didn't know what to think, and even their necks turned red. What are the two of you talking about so happily? Tell me too. Let me be happy too. Chu Yang walked to the side of the bed calmly and sat down between the two. He reached out, and the two women fell into his arms. Nothing. Tai Butian blushed. It's really nothing, Wu Qianqian emphasized with a red face. That's not right. Chu Yang blinked and said, I heard everything just now. You heard everything? The two women screamed at the same time. What did you hear? It's so comfortable. Chu Yang sighed with satisfaction. This is the life of an immortal. Chu Yang had fantasized countless times before, but never had the chance to carry out the threesome. But today he had finally achieved his wish. The satisfaction in Chu Yang's heart was unparalleled. In particular, Minister Chu was thinking in his heart, everything is difficult at the beginning. As long as there is a first time, then it is a beginning. In the future, won't I be able to taste delicious food at any time? Thinking of this, Minister Chu laughed obscenely. Ha 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 ha. Hearing this perverted laughter, the two women were embarrassed and angry. They wanted to reach out and pinch him, but they didn't have any strength left. It was as if their whole bodies were cramping, and they went limp. Pervert. Scoundrel. Tai Butian rested for a long while before she finally cursed out loud in shame, thinking about how Wu Qianqian had actually seen her at her most embarrassing state. The former emperor wished that there was a hole in the ground to jump into and never come out again. It was so embarrassing. At the side, Wu Qianqian buried her face in the quilt, refusing to raise her head. Tai Butian was obviously very embarrassed, and Wu Qianqian was even more embarrassed. Today was their first time, and then they slept together under such a lewd and unruly quilt. What should they do in the future? Chu Yang was proud of himself. So what if I'm a pervert? So what if I'm a scoundrel? Hee hee. As long as it's comfortable. The two women scolded at the same time. They struggled to prop themselves up and bit hard on his shoulders, one on each side. Chu Yang grimaced. But how could he not let them vent after taking such great advantage of him? He just had to endure it. Just this once. Tai Butian's face was red, but her voice was resolute and decisive. There definitely won't be a next time. At the side, Wu Qianqian nodded desperately, expressing her agreement and support. Huh. There won't be a next time? Chu Yang flipped over and pressed down on Tai Butian again. Your Majesty's words are law, so I'll definitely do as you say. Since that's the case, let's play a few more times, in case we don't have another chance in the future. As he spoke, he was about to touch her. Tai Butian felt the fiery pressure and threat, and couldn't help but turn pale. Even in her dreams, she didn't expect Chu Yang to be able to regain his vigor so quickly. She hurriedly begged for mercy. No, 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 no. I can't take it. Chu Yang straddled his horse and looked down from above. Then tell me, will there be a next time? Tai Butian looked at him with a red face and gritted teeth. She said angrily, Definitely not. Chu Yang nodded. His body suddenly bent down and he said, All right. She slowly moved her waist forward in a panic. Tai Butian shouted, Qianqian, quickly come and save me. Wu Qianqian couldn't even wait to protect herself. How would she dare to save her? It was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. She wanted to take this opportunity to get off the bed quietly. But the moment she moved, she was hugged by Chu Yang. Trying to run? If you don't give me an answer today, neither of you can get off this bed. If you don't agree, then we can only have fun today. After a long time, after another storm, Chu Yang was extremely satisfied and chuckled. Under Minister Chu's extremely violent attacks, the two women were finally forced to sign an agreement. They agreed to Great Manor Master Chu's licentious and tyrannical request. After a long time, the two women gritted their teeth and put on their clothes. They only felt limp and sore all over their bodies. The gaze they looked at Chu Yang with was even more furious and hateful. This guy is simply an animal, a beast. It was a never-ending torrential downpour and stormy waves. Who can stand him? Fortunately, there is still Qianqian. Fortunately, there is still His Majesty. The two women thought so in their hearts. The two women who finally recovered had a frosty look on their faces. Their expressions were cold and solemn, and they completely ignored Chu Yang. Even if they didn't consider the exhaustion of their physical strength, just the shyness and the alliance between them made the two women feel so ashamed that they wanted to crawl into a hole and crawl into it. Even in their dreams, they didn't expect that they would actually sleep together with this beast. In fact, today was just a beginning. Another day. At this point, even when the two women occasionally looked at each other, they immediately turned their heads away. Then their pretty faces flushed, and they were extremely uneasy, thinking of how their most embarrassing side was clearly seen by another person. This kind of embarrassment, this kind of absurdity, almost completely overturned the two women's previous understanding. What was even more frightening was that in the future, there would probably be more like this, and it was very likely that other women would join in. At least one Mo Qinggu wouldn't be able to escape. Cough. Could this be the legendary Immortal's Day? Great Manor Master Chu stretched lazily as he walked out. He shook his hips, waist and neck, and his face looked like a weasel who had just eaten chicken. A certain someone was addicted to it, and even signed an agreement to fulfill his great wish. How could he not feel refreshed and happy? Humph! The two women were embarrassed in their hearts at the same time. Their faces were full of anger as they turned their faces away. Thinking back to those days, both of us were at the pinnacle of the world. We commanded the entire world. We were in charge of life and death. We were heroes who looked down on the common people. How could we sleep together with you like this? And you're still acting so humph. That I say Qianqian. Chu Yang knew that the two women definitely couldn't accept everything in their hearts. He ignored the two women's frosty faces and said to himself, "Let me tell you, we're very short on rooms now, and we're very free. We don't have any extra rooms for you, so you can stay with Tian for the time being. Anyway, such a big courtyard is enough for the two of you to live in. You two have reunited after such a long time, so you should be affectionate and affectionate. Yes, you can sleep together in bed. What a wonderful thing. I can't wait for it to happen. Beautiful scenery, a good family and a full moon. You can be close to your bosom friends, whispering and speaking freely. Under the moonlight and flowers, you can take care of each other, protect each other, and exchange ideas. Haha, that would be such a wonderful thing. Just thinking about it makes me envious, jealous, and eager to participate in it." Chu Yang shamelessly fantasized for a while. Speaking of the thickness of his skin, Minister Chu was definitely at the peak of perfection, unparalleled. Such a big courtyard, hundreds of acres of land, and Wu Qianqian couldn't stay in it? Only Great Manor Master Chu could say something like that. Good. What's good about it? What's good about it? Do you think we don't know what kind of intentions you have? Taibu Tian said coldly. Letting me stay with Qianqian, I'm afraid the biggest convenience is to make it convenient for a pervert like you, right? How can you say that about me? You've hurt my heart too much. Chu Yang widened his eyes. Am I that kind of person? Am I that kind of person in your heart? Taibu Tian's almond eyes widened, full of anger. Fine, I'll let you say it yourself. What kind of person are you? You say it. Chu Yang said with awe-inspiring righteousness. I, your husband, am naturally a righteous man. The two women looked at each other, stunned and speechless for a long time. After a long while Wu Qianqian said, A righteous ruler? Do you believe what you're saying? Chu Yang chuckled and said, Why wouldn't I believe it? Don't you think I know what kind of person I am? Even if I don't know, how can the two of you not know? The two women were dumbfounded again. They never thought that there would actually be such a shameless person in this world. Taibu Tian said fiercely, Fine, since you call yourself a righteous ruler and are so righteous, then shouldn't you do something that a righteous ruler should do? You also said that our conditions are limited, and our rooms are even smaller. This room belongs to the two of us. You're not allowed to enter in the future. Hurry up and do those righteous ruler things. The two of us won't disturb you from doing your business. In just one night, the three of them felt that their cultivation had solidified a lot. Moreover, there was a faint feeling that they were advancing rapidly. This was especially true for Chu Yang and Wu Qianqian. Both of them had special physiques and extraordinary talents. So this feeling was especially intense. As for Tai Butian, although her aptitude was slightly inferior to the other two, and was slightly slower, the icy heart jade bone physique was also an extremely rare physique. Even in the entire heaven circuit, it was considered a peerless talent. It was even better than those youths who had been upgraded by Chu Yang's magic treasures. However, Tai Butian started to feel a little anxious. Her cultivation was already inferior to the two of them in the first place. Now she was falling behind step by step. How could this be? An emperor should have the dignity of an emperor. Even though she was a woman, her dignity was still the same. Therefore, in the end, Tai Butian couldn't care less about her shyness anymore. She pestered Chu Yang to cultivate crazily. Naturally, Chu Yang would never refuse such an invitation. Later on, due to a certain someone's stubbornness, Tai Butian actually fainted in the process of cultivating. It was obvious that Minister Chu had put in a lot of effort in his practice. Chu Yang hugged the beauty in his arms. The two of them slept peacefully in each other's arms. In the Chu clan's courtyard, in the shade of the small courtyard where Tai Butian stayed, brother who was lying comfortably on the ground. Ever since he had digested the 20 souls of purple crystal that Chu Yang had given him, he had taken the money to resolve the problem. Now that his cultivation had recovered, brother who naturally had to shoulder the heavy responsibility of protecting Tai Butian. With brother who's protection, Chu Yang finally felt more at ease. The next morning, Chu Yang had just woken up when someone suddenly came to report that a Duke Yuntian had requested an audience. Yuntian? Chu Yang was puzzled. What is he here for? Chu Yang was extremely wary of this person. In these few days, the invisible pressure in his heart had been increasing, causing Chu Yang to be constantly paranoid. However, he didn't discover anything out of the ordinary. They wouldn't allow anyone to destroy it. If he killed Chu Yang now, he would probably be besieged by all the big sects. And he would also have to face the full force of the Eastern Royal Heavens official forces. If it really reached that stage, the people of the Ghost Hunter would probably be annihilated here. He couldn't bear such a serious consequence no matter what. So he was so angry that he was about to explode. But he couldn't move at all. He didn't dare to move at all. Then, Chu Yang looked up to the sky and laughed coldly. He turned around and strode away without hesitation. A cold voice sounded and 2 words fell like ice beads. See the guests out. Then, the 3 great swordsmen snorted and sheathed their swords at the same time. They looked at the 3 people coldly and left without saying a word. This is too much. The elder who came later was furious. He doesn't even put our ghost hunter in his eyes. Yun Tian looked at him with pity and said indifferently, he doesn't even put our Sky Sword Alliance in his eyes, let alone your ghost hunter. What qualifications do you have for him to put you in his eyes? The elder said angrily. Are we just going to let this matter go like this? Yun Tian said indifferently. Unless you can represent your ghost hunter, and also bear the risk of going against the other 8 big sects. Otherwise, before the auction ends, no one will allow anything to happen to Chu Yang. If you don't want to let it go like this, we can only let it go like this. Can you? Do you dare? So, everything will have to wait until the auction ends. Yun Tian turned around and left. Remember, if you dare to do anything during this period, our extreme heavens will be the first to kill you all. Today's matter was very different from his original plan. But Yun Tian could only do so. Although there was suspicion of changing orders, and it was inevitable that his credibility would be bad. For the long-term plan of thousands of years, Yun Tian knew better than anyone how to choose. Yun Tian, wait a minute. Yuan should have finally caught his breath. Yun Tian slowly turned around. What's the matter? Yuan should have stared at him. This Chu Yang. I'm afraid he's not as simple as just the shopkeeper of an auction house, right? He finally felt that something was wrong. Yun Tian laughed and shook his head. Does Brother Yuan think that Chu Yang is still the son of the great celestial emperor? Brother Yuan should have investigated Chu Yang's news clearly. Otherwise, I'm afraid you wouldn't have come today, right? Information is information. Yuan shut his eyes flickered with black light, and he looked a little ferocious. Yun Tian, did you dig a hole for me? A small auction house shopkeeper, would definitely not have 3 celestial being-level experts protecting him. Not to mention in a remote place like Wuxia City. The moment the 3 great swordsmen appeared, Yuan Shita instantly understood. Chapter 2084. Xu Yang imagined the demeanor of this saint back then, and couldn't help but be impressed. 1. Enchanted. If this saint was me. After being severed by the sword, the entire upper half of the mountain flew out just like that and landed on one side. It wasn't even intentional. Looking at the distance between the 2 mountains, the sword spirit's face twitched as he continued to narrate the shocking facts. Lord Sword Master, you may not know this, but there's a huge difference between having an expert on a mountain and not having one. The sword spirit murmured. The hardness of this mountain back then was probably more than 1,000 times harder than it is now. Especially when facing an enemy, it should be even more terrifying. Xu Yang opened his mouth wide and shuddered in fear. What kind of strength did he have to be able to do that? Could he really go to such a level? Those past events are too distant for us. Let's search the foot of the mountain first. Xu Yang took a breath and expelled all the shocked emotions in his heart. However, he already had an intuitive understanding in his heart. Damn it! The Shui Leihan that I scold every day is actually such a terrifying existence? Without comparison, I really can't tell. The 2 of them went along the way and saw that some parts of the mountain were already covered with grass and some shrubs. However, there wasn't anything special about it. On one side, there was a mountain path with white jade railings and green jade steps winding down. Xu Yang and the sword spirit went down the steps. They had just gone down 2 steps, when the sword spirit suddenly trembled all over. Looking at the dense trees on both sides, he was in a daze for a while and murmured, Kanglin wood? The entire mountain is actually planted with Kanglin wood. Kanglin wood? What's that? Xu Yang asked curiously. 150,000 years ago, the Kanglin wood was an extremely rare type of wood. Speaking of which, there is nothing special about this type of wood, but its texture is extremely hard. Not to mention ordinary steel. Even star steel may not be able to compare to the hardness of the Kanglin wood. Therefore, as long as the conditions permit, most people would use the Kanglin wood as the handle of their weapons. However, later on, everyone began to realize that although the azure wave wood was hard enough, it was easily corroded. Therefore, it was gradually eliminated. But very coincidentally, there was an unexpected discovery. The core of the azure wave wood was actually all purple. It was very dazzling and didn't decay as easily as the other parts. Because of this, the core of the azure wave wood was collected by various big worlds to be used as a material to make coins. However, later on, it was discovered that the core of the azure wave wood could be easily imitated.